Megan crossed her arms, shifting her weight onto one foot. You sure? She asked, her tone carrying a slight edge. Most people ask for fries or a drink. The man met her gaze evenly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. No, ma'am, just the burger. Megan huffed quietly and turned on her heel, muttering under her breath, whatever you say, cowboy. As she walked away, her coworker, Jason, caught her arm. Do you know who that is? He whispered, his eyes wide. Megan frowned, glancing back at the old man. Some guy with a hat and a thing for plain burgers? Jason's jaw dropped. That's Clint Eastwood. Megan blinked, her stomach dropping slightly. No way. Jason nodded, still whispering. I swear. He lives in town. You know, Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood legend. The guy who was mayor of Carmel. Megan felt heat creep up her neck. She turned back toward the man at table 12, suddenly aware of how dismissive she'd been. Her fingers curled around her notepad as she replayed the last few minutes in her head. The way he had looked at her, the calm, unbothered manner in which he had responded to her impatience. Oh no. Swallowing her nerves, she made her way back to his table, her practiced smile now replaced with something more genuine, if not a little nervous. Everything okay with your burger, sir? Clint looked up from his meal, raising an eyebrow. It's just fine. Thanks. Megan hesitated, then took a deep breath. I didn't realize who you were. His lips quirked in a slight grin. Would it have made a difference? Her face burned. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say that she wouldn't have treated him with such impatience if she had known. But the truth hit her like a freight train. If she treated one customer better than another just because of their name, what did that say about her? I guess it shouldn't have, she admitted, shifting uncomfortably. Clint nodded approvingly. Good answer. Before Megan could respond, the restaurant manager, Mr. Larson, appeared out of nowhere, his usual gruff demeanor replaced with nervous enthusiasm. Mr. Eastwood, what an honor to have you here. Sir. He shot Megan a sharp look, as if silently demanding why she hadn't recognized their famous guest sooner. Clint waved a dismissive hand. I'm just here for a burger. Larson, no need to make a fuss. The manager chuckled nervously. Of course. Of course. On the house. Of course. Clint's eyes darkened slightly, and he shook his head. No, I pay for my meals like everybody else. Megan bit the inside of her cheek, watching the manager flounder. Clint Eastwood didn't need free food. He didn't expect special treatment. He had carried himself like any other regular customer, and she had been too caught up in her bad mood to treat him with the same courtesy. As the lunch rush continued, Megan made sure to check on Clint's table a little more often, not out of obligation, but out of a newfound respect. When he was done, he placed a crisp $100 bill under his plate, far exceeding the cost of his meal. Megan's breath hitched as she picked it up. Sir, this is way too much. Clint stood, adjusting his Stetson as he glanced at her. Nah, it's just enough. She stared at him, unsure what to say. He tipped his hat slightly. Next time, don't judge a book by its cover, kid. And with that, Clint Eastwood strolled out of Sierra Grill, leaving behind a stunned waitress, a flustered manager, and a restaurant full of customers who had just witnessed something they wouldn't soon forget. Megan looked down at the bill in her hand. Underneath it was a small note written on a napkin. Everyone has bad days. Just don't let them decide who you are. She exhaled slowly, her grip tightening on the note. Lesson learned. As she tucked the napkin into her apron pocket, she knew one thing for sure. This was a day she'd never forget. Then reached into his pocket, pulling out a neatly folded bill. He placed it on the table without looking at it, his focus instead on Megan. You have a good day now, he said, his voice steady, unhurried. Megan gave a curt nod, grabbing the bill without much thought. But as she unfolded it, her breath hitched. A crisp $100 bill lay beneath the check. Her eyebrows shot up. She looked back at the man, expecting him to smirk or make some kind of comment, but he was already standing, adjusting his hat with a calm ease. Wait, this is too much, she said, holding up the bill. I can get your change. The man tilted his head slightly, his sharp eyes studying her. No need. Consider it a tip. Megan hesitated. It wasn't the first time she'd received a big tip, but something about this felt different. She wasn't exactly pleasant to him. If anything, she had been dismissive, even borderline rude. Are you sure? She asked, her voice quieter now. He nodded once, a small but knowing smile appearing at the edge of his lips. I'm sure. Before Megan could respond, the restaurant's manager, Mr. Larson, came rushing out of the back, his usually stern face flushed with urgency. Megan, he called, his eyes darting between her and the man. Do you have any idea who you've been serving? Megan frowned, glancing back at the man in confusion. A guy who likes his burgers plain? Larson nearly choked on his own breath. That guy is Clint Eastwood. Silence. Megan felt like the entire restaurant had frozen. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned back toward the man, Clint Eastwood, who was now looking at her with that same unreadable expression. Oh, was all she managed to say. Larson, clearly mortified, hurried toward Eastwood, his hands practically wringing. Mr. Eastwood, I am so sorry if there was any lapse in service. If I had known. Clint held up a hand, cutting him off. Relax. Larson, he said coolly, your staff is honest. Megan felt her stomach twist. Was that a compliment? A polite way of saying she'd been rude? She wasn't sure. Sir, please, your meal is on the house. Larson continued, desperate to salvage the situation. But Clint shook his head. I pay for my meals like everybody else. Megan, still reeling from the revelation, finally found her voice. I didn't recognize you. Clint let out a quiet chuckle, adjusting his hat. That much was obvious. A wave of heat rushed to her face. She had treated him like just another customer. No special treatment, no fawning, no recognition, and now she felt completely exposed. Clint took one last look around the restaurant before turning back to Megan. His expression softened, just slightly. You remind me of someone I used to know, he said. She swallowed, unsure how to respond. Don't let a bad day decide who you are, he added. Then, with a nod, he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind a stunned silence. Megan stood frozen, watching as Clint Eastwood strolled out of Sierra Grill and into the California sun. Larson ran a hand down his face. Unbelievable, he muttered. Then he turned to Megan. I cannot believe you didn't recognize Clint Eastwood. Do you even know who he is? Megan, still gripping the $100 bill in her hand, exhaled slowly. Yeah, she murmured. I do now. Later that night, as she emptied her apron pockets, she found the folded napkin he had left under the bill. Scrawled in neat, deliberate handwriting were just a few words. Not all cowboys are what they seem. Megan sat back in her chair, staring at the note. A slow smile crept onto her lips, and not once had she realized that Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director, was the owner. Worse, she had treated him like just another nuisance customer, brushing him off with sarcasm and impatience. She buried her face in her hands. Of all the people to be rude to, her mind raced through the events of the past hour, each interaction playing back like a scene in one of his old westerns. The way he had looked at her, the way he had spoken, calm, deliberate, like he was measuring every word. The way he had left her with that pointed comment about how people treat others when they're having a bad day. How you treat people in those moments says more about you than you think. The words stung now in a way they hadn't before. Danny peeked his head into the break room, raising an eyebrow. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Megan let out a hollow laugh. Might as well have. Danny chuckled. You sure? 'Cause you look like you just realized you told Clint Eastwood to take his cowboy wisdom somewhere else. Megan groaned, dropping her head onto the table. Don't remind me. Danny shook his head, amused. You're gonna be a legend for this one. But Megan didn't feel like laughing. Her job at Sierra Grill wasn't just a paycheck. It was her livelihood. She had worked double shifts, covered for coworkers, dealt with difficult customers, all while trying to save enough money for college. And now, she had just been rude to the one person who had the power to decide whether she kept that job or not. Would he fire me? A knot formed in her stomach. Clint Eastwood didn't seem like the vengeful type, but still, he owned the place. If he didn't like how she treated customers, she could be gone by the end of the day. Megan sat in the break room for what felt like forever, debating whether she should go after him, apologize, say something to fix this mess. But when she finally stepped back into the restaurant, he was already gone. Carol was still chatting with the kitchen staff about the unexpected visit. He's always so down to earth, she was saying. He loves this place, loves the people. He built it to feel like home, not some fancy Hollywood spot. That's why he treats everyone with kindness. Megan swallowed hard, and I treated him like a burden. The rest of her shift dragged on. Every order she took feeling heavier. The customers blurred together, but the weight of her mistake stayed sharp. She kept looking toward the door, half expecting Eastwood to return, to say something, anything, about their earlier exchange. But he didn't. By closing time, Megan was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She helped stack chairs, wiped down tables, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But as she grabbed her bag from the back, Carol called out, "Megan, wait a second." Megan's heart jumped into her throat. "Here it comes." She turned slowly. "Yeah." Carol smiled, but there was something unreadable in her expression. "Mr. Eastwood left something for you." Megan blinked. "He, what?" Carol reached into her apron and pulled out a neatly folded napkin. She handed it to Megan. Confused, Megan unfolded it. Scrawled in ink, in careful, deliberate handwriting, were just a few words. "A job's what you make of it. See you next time." Megan stared at the note, reading it once, twice, 3 times. "A job's what you make of it. Not you're fired. Not you need to do better. Just a quiet nudge. A reminder. And maybe, just maybe, a second chance." Her breath left her in a slow exhale, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. She looked at Carol. Did he say anything else?" Carol shook her head, grinning. "Nope. Just left that and paid his check like he always does." Megan nodded slowly, folding the napkin carefully and tucking it into her pocket. Maybe she had been carrying a lot that day. Maybe she had let frustration cloud her attitude. But Clint Eastwood, a man who had seen and done more in one lifetime than she could ever imagine, hadn't judged her for it. He had just reminded her that she had a choice. As she walked out into the night, she made a silent promise to herself, next time, she'd choose better. They lingered in her mind, replaying at unexpected moments. Every interaction's an opportunity. Use it well. She started paying closer attention, not just to her customers, but to herself. She smiled more. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She asked people how their day was going and actually listened to their answers. She refilled drinks before being asked, not out of obligation, but because she finally understood that small gestures mattered. And slowly, something changed. The grumpy regulars softened, offering her a nod or a small smile when they walked in. Customers who had once ignored her now asked for her by name. Even Carol, who rarely gave compliments, pulled her aside one afternoon and said, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but keep it up." Megan just smiled. She still had tough shifts. There were still customers who were rude, days when she felt exhausted, moments when she wanted to snap. But every time frustration bubbled up, she thought about Clint Eastwood, about the way he had looked at her, not with judgment, but with quiet expectation. People notice. A month later, Megan was wiping down the same corner table where Clint had sat when she heard Carol calling her from the front. "Megan, can you come here for a second?" She set her rag down and made her way to the counter. Carol stood there, arms crossed, with a smirk that made Megan's stomach twist. Beside her, seated casually at the bar, was Clint Eastwood. Megan froze. "Mr. Eastwood has a question for you," Carol said, clearly enjoying the moment. Megan swallowed hard. Yes, sir." Clint turned slightly on his stool, his sharp eyes studying her. Then, with a small nod, he asked, "How's the job treating you?" Megan exhaled, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I think I'm starting to figure it out." Clint chuckled, his weathered face breaking into a knowing grin. "Good answer." Carol patted Megan's shoulder. You know, he doesn't just own this place, he built it. Every piece of this restaurant, every detail, was something he had a hand in. And he's not one for wasting time on people who don't care about the work they do. Megan's eyes widened. She knew Clint was the owner, but she hadn't realized just how much this place meant to him. Clint nodded. I believe in second chances, he said simply. And from what I hear, you've made the most of yours. Megan felt her throat tighten. A few months ago, she might have brushed off a moment like this, laughed it away. But now, she understood. She straightened, meeting his gaze. I appreciate that, sir. Clint picked up his coffee, taking a slow sip before setting it down. Then, with a small, satisfied nod, he said, Good, keep it up. And with that, he tipped his hat and walked out the door. Megan stood there for a long moment, watching him go, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, pride. She had come this close to losing her job, to letting her own frustration and cynicism cost her something valuable. But instead, she had been given a rare opportunity, a lesson in humility, in kindness, in paying attention, and she wasn't about to waste it. Megan replayed Clint's words in her mind every time she stepped onto the restaurant floor. Every interaction's an opportunity. Use it well. At first, she wasn't sure how to start making changes. She wasn't the type to flash fake smiles or gush over customers like some of her coworkers did. But Clint's calm demeanor and quiet wisdom had struck a chord. She didn't have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. She just needed to show a little more patience, a little more care. So, she started small. When a frazzled mom with 3 kids spilled a soda across the table, Megan didn't sigh or roll her eyes. Instead, she grabbed a rack, smiled, and said, Don't worry, it happens to the best of us. When an elderly couple asked her to repeat the specials 3 times, she didn't let her frustration show. She patiently explained them again, even adding her own recommendations. And the thing that surprised her most? The more effort she put into treating people kindly, the better she felt. Customers started to notice. The regulars who used to rush in and out without a word now paused to chat with her. Some even asked for her section when they came in. One afternoon, a man who had been quietly observing her left an extra tip and a note on the receipt that read, Your kindness didn't go unnoticed today. Thank you. For the first time in a long time, Megan felt a sense of purpose in her job. A conversation that changed everything. One evening, near the end of her shift, Carol called Megan into the office. Megan's stomach twisted with nerves as she stepped inside, fearing the worst. You've been working here for a while, Carol began, folding her hands on the desk. And I've noticed a change in you lately, a good one. Megan blinked, unsure how to respond. Oh, thank you. I don't know what brought it on. Carol continued. But whatever you're doing, keep it up. The customers have noticed too. One of them even left a comment card the other day praising your service. Megan felt her chest swell with a mix of pride and disbelief. She hadn't expected anyone to notice her efforts, let alone acknowledge them. As she left the office, a smile tugged at her lips. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path, a lesson that would stay with her forever. That night, as she locked up the restaurant, she glanced at the sign out front. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a place where she could grow, learn, and maybe even make a difference. And she owed it all to the quiet cowboy who had walked in one busy afternoon and taught her a lesson she'd never forget. Because sometimes, the smallest interactions have the biggest impact, and every moment is a chance to become someone better. This story is a powerful reminder that we never truly know who we are interacting with or what impact our words and actions might have. A simple act of kindness, a moment of patience, or even a shift in attitude can create ripples far beyond what we see. In a world where stress and frustration often cloud our interactions, choosing to be kind, even when it's hard, can open doors to growth and unexpected opportunities. Every moment is a chance to learn, improve, and leave a positive mark on someone's day. So, approach life with humility and kindness. You never know who's watching or what lesson you might be learning in return.